This is a recording for the fall session of the Educator AI Lab. Unfortunately, the original recording from that particular session is not of great quality, so we decided to re-record the training content to provide it as a standalone resource. So some of the information here is going to be what we shared during the actual session, but it's pretty much just a walkthrough by me, Crystal Chapman. I'm the first image here, the CSTA Mississippi president. I'm a brown-skinned Black woman with brown eyes, a short tapered haircut, and in this image that you see, I have on a blazer and a leopard print shirt. On this particular day, I was joined by the CSTA Mississippi Vice President, Ed Blake, and a couple of CSTA fellows, Kathleen, Leonte, and Jenny. And so essentially the way we structured everything is that we provide the training and the content information in the beginning, and then towards the end of our time, we go into the lab and we work through different scenarios or just explore openly with the tools that have been presented and shared. So the agenda for that day was to complete the survey on AI in education, and that link is available for you to complete it even after this particular session took place. Going to talk about artificial intelligence, what it truly is and what it means, discuss AI and equity, talk about two of the tools. The first tool is going to be Magic School AI. This assists with admin related tasks for educators. And then the second tool we're talking about is Teachable Machine, which could be for those that are in education that want to explore on their own, but we have framed this to be a resource for student direct learning. And then, as I mentioned before, this is where we would go into the lab and everyone would get to experiment. And then in closing, we offer resources. And before we move forward, I would be absolutely remiss to not mention that this specific series is made available to all CSTA members through a collaboration of CSTA Mississippi chapter and the Mississippi AI Collaborative. If you're interested in learning more about the chapter itself or the Mississippi AI Collaborative and what they offer, please make sure you check out the resources that are linked to this particular video. So let's start at the basics. Quick speed run, we're going to go through this quickly. What is artificial intelligence? So artificial intelligence, first, is not something that is new. Artificial intelligence has been in existence since about the 1950s is when they really started looking to see what type of information they could, quote unquote, teach a computer. And there has been artificial intelligence use in education since about the late 1970s, early 1980s. So I can say that AI use in general, as well as in education, has been in existence before I was born. So make sure you frame yourself in the time. Of course, we feel like everything is new, and we are definitely, as educators, feeling the pressure to acclimate and jump onto this AI wave because in November of 2022, OpenAI released the first version of ChatGPT, and generative AI really made an impact, right? Right. So if we're talking about artificial intelligence, on the screen we have one of these really complex looking graphic organizers that shows all of the different types of everything based on categories. So if we're looking at it, artificial intelligence is a part of knowledge-based systems, machine learning, types of AI, components of AI, which can include action and communication, optimization. So if you're a business owner, talking about how the algorithm works or making sure that your website can get found in a Google search, that falls into that. Automated planning and scheduling. So for those of us that absolutely love how when you get into your newer model vehicle, and if you attach your phone through one of the apps that you can use, based on your calendar, your GPS and your car will essentially tell you where you should go to make your next meeting. So that is a part of that. Natural language processing. So when we're going from speech to text or text to speech, how we're able to talk to our digital assistants, that falls into that category. Robotics. People love to forget about robotics, but robotics is a major part of artificial intelligence. And so Robotics in all of its ways, because robotics is a very huge, complex field within itself. Computer vision. So how we are able to automatically scan QR codes, and your device already knows the QR code and knows what to do with it. Or how you're able to, for example, for a lot of the apps that allow you to shop. So pretty much any big store that you're aware of, you can go into the app, and instead of searching, you can actually click. Generally, there's a little icon in the search bar that opens up your camera. And then your camera will, of course, zoom in on a particular object that you're interested in. And because of computer vision, is able to identify that item and then go through an algorithm where you are given the output or given the information about that particular item, whether or not the store has it, um, what options they have that item in, and where you can find it, right? So these are some of the ways that artificial intelligence shows up. There's so many other ways, so many other things that we can talk about when it comes to this. So AI has been here for an extremely long time. It's just now that we have generative AI and it's accessible to us quite quickly through Bard, through Dolly, through ChatGPT, that is at the forefront of our mind of what artificial intelligence is. So hopefully that helps clear everything up. So as we're talking about AI, I want to leave you with a solid definition. And this is the definition that the U.S. Department of Education Office of Instructional Technology uses. And it is automations based on associations. So automations meaning following a predetermined algorithm, and then associations based on whatever categorization or organization of data that is already in existence. So association is another way to say it, pattern identification based on the data, and then automations is a completion of predefined algorithms. That's the part that I really want to make sure I emphasize. I know that when we're talking to others about tech and how AI is coming in, you may hear concerns about how computers are taking over, or, we're going to be replaced, or this is just like the Terminator. And these images, these types of conversations evoke a lot of fear. And so, as we stand in AI right now, everything is based on what someone else creates. Computers are not able to make continued end result decisions on their own. Everything is based on an algorithm that was provided to them by a human. Now, of course, we could have the conversation and we could argue that, well, all people don't necessarily have the best intentions when it comes to creating things that all of us must use. And I absolutely agree. But we must keep in our mind while we're working through getting comfortable using AI, and especially using AI with our learners, that everything is based on something that has already been defined. So even if you have a program where the program is able to piece together an algorithm to make a new algorithm, that is still based on predefined limitations created by humans. Speaking of humans, what role do humans play in AI use and development? So, do humans function as a robotic vacuum, or is it more like an electric bicycle? And if you're unfamiliar with these tools, robotic vacuums essentially allow you to press a start button or even use an app on your phone to where you start the vacuum to cleaning your floor. Now the robotic vacuums actually have a mop option as well. They're really, really fancy. And so you push a button, it starts, it goes, right? With an electric bicycle, on the other hand, it's a little bit more people power involved. It's still a little Fred Flintstone-ish, if you know what I mean. So an electric bicycle allows you to travel farther distances much faster, but the pedaling of your feet is still required. Okay? So based on those explanations, which role bestly which role best describes how humans intertwine or are a part of AI use and development? And if you said an electric bicycle, you would be absolutely correct. As I stated before, the things that our devices, that our machines, that our programs can do are still extremely tightly linked to humans. We cannot turn it on and let it go. It has to be monitored, it has to be evaluated, it has to be improved. A lot of times it has to be fixed. So we are still in that electric bicycle space, and that's where we want to stay, to where humans are always in the loop. Let's talk about AI opportunities and challenges. Everyone is so excited about what AI brings to the table, and sometimes we forget to discuss the issues that may arise whenever we have AI usage that doesn't consider every person, or AI usage and tool creation that is unintentionally harmful. So we're going to view two videos to kind of give us an example of how both function.
In some classrooms for older kids, administrators have found a place for artificial intelligence. What's not known is whether this could be a substitute for old school education.
A timeless scene that has been played out in schools around the world for centuries. Young students enjoying their break between lessons. But back in the classroom of this school in Abu Dhabi, a transformation is happening.
In this lesson, you learn to solve equations with rational coefficients.
Whiteboards, markers, and books have been replaced with interactive calendars, digital avatars, and laptops.
Let's solve this equation together.
14-year-old Mariam Mohammed is just one of 25,000 students in the UAE and the US being taught through the Olive Education platform.
When we was using books, it was like so boring. So it's nice to use new technology and learning, not in a traditional way.
Founded in Abu Dhabi in 2015, the online program is using technology to disrupt traditional education in the classroom. Children are encouraged to create their own avatar. And through the use of videos, animation, digital content, and questions along the way, the Olive platform aids learning. At its headquarters in Abu Dhabi, in a secured control room, analysts use artificial intelligence to make sense of the reams of information coming in.
But we capture millions of data points on a daily basis. A human cannot process that many data points.
The premise is simple. If a pupil struggles with a concept, the system adapts and presents the lesson again in a form more tailored to the student. The result is reframing the future of education.
Wouldn't it be great if you could look at artificial intelligence and data to drive kids into the right careers, into the right choices post-secondary education?
When it comes to adopting AI technology, the United Arab Emirates is one country leading the way. But with artificial intelligence expected to generate $96 billion towards the economy by 2030, some are worried that this technology comes at a cost, with a growing debate over whether the benefits outweigh increased screen time for children or potential privacy concerns.
So I think that particular video kind of highlights some of the things that many educators are looking for. The big thing that I heard was that that platform uses data science. So data science is one of the big parts of artificial intelligence. Um, Making sense of large amounts of data is definitely something we need computers to do. So I will say this, if you are having conversations with educators and they are frustrated about AI use, remind them that anytime that they're using a platform that gives them immediate feedback about student performance that is database, most likely they're already using AI. But specifically with this platform, it uses those data points to help guide educators on how to guide students. And I think that when we're looking for ways to utilize technology that help make all of us better, I can pretty much make the assumption that we all think along those lines. How can we use or leverage these tools to get to the place where our students are going to be the most successful, possibly a little bit faster than an older way of just kind of testing this out and testing that out to see what sticks. And so these adaptive learning platforms are all over the place. If you are in K-12 education, I can almost guarantee that your district or your school has you utilizing a tool that uses similar methods of AI. So you may not know what's happening behind the scenes, but you are using these tools probably more often than what you realize. And now let's look at the second video that brings to light some of the concerns and major challenges of continued and widespread AI use.
My heart smiles as I bask in their legacies, knowing their lives have altered many destinies. In her eyes, I see my mother's poise. In her face, I glimpse my auntie's grace. In this case of deja vu, a 19th century question comes into view. In a time when Sojourner Truth asked, "Ain't I a woman?" Today, we pose this question to new powers, making bets on artificial intelligence, hope towers. The Amazonians peek through windows blocking deep blues as faces increment scars. Old burns, new urns, collecting data chronicling our past, often forgetting to deal with gender, race, and class. Again, I ask, ain't I a woman? Face by face, the answers seem uncertain. Young and old, proud icons are dismissed. Can machines ever see my queens as I view them? Can machines ever see our grandmothers as we knew them? Ida B. Wells, data science pioneer, hanging facts, stacking stats on the lynching of humanity, teaching truths hidden in data, each entry and omission, a person worthy of respect. Shirley Chisholm unbought and unbossed, the first Black Congresswoman, but not the first to be misunderstood by machines well-versed in data-driven mistakes. Michelle Obama, unabashed and unafraid to wear her crown of history, yet her crown seems a mystery to systems unsure of her hair. A wig, a bouffant, a toupee? Maybe not. Are there no words for our braids and our locks? The sunny skin and relaxed hair make Oprah the first lady. Even for her face, well known, some algorithms falter, echoing sentiments that strong women are men. We laugh, celebrating the successes of our sisters with Serena smiles. No label is worthy of our beauty. Thank you.
So that approach definitely was more artistic, but still brought to light the issue with something as simple as recognition of gender in imagery. And so this is something that happens often, and this is something that is the foundation of more complex programs that, as you saw, determine the risk factor of repeat offenders or the potential for someone to commit a crime again. And so what Dr. Joy Buolamwini does, she is phenomenal. She is at the forefront of having these hard conversations about the negative and the dangerous impacts that AI use can have. And what she often focuses on is how the data is just really, really skewed. If we're going to talk about how AI works, we always have to talk about the data. And so, in order for these programs to work, in order for the machines to learn, if you want to phrase it that way, they have to be fed a lot of data, a lot of information. And unfortunately, there are certain groups of individuals that get discriminated against in data. And we could have a super long conversation about the inequities when it comes to data. But just for quick understanding, the data is not fair in the sense that it does not equally represent all groups of people. And so this is something surface level we can discuss race, but we can go deeper when it comes to conversations about predictive performance for students with learning disabilities or how the outcome for a particular student may change based on the information they provide in the college application. So it's everywhere. It is seeped into everything. And this is where AI can get a little scary. So if you are definitely interested in learning more about some of the issues and the inequities, especially when it comes to AI use and data, she is a great reference. And for those of us that are from Mississippi, she has a Mississippi connection. Her father was a professor over at Ole Miss. And so she spent a good portion of her formative years right in Oxford. So yes, Mississippi is everywhere all the time. All right, so let's get a little bit deeper into what we're actually talking about or what we discussed during this particular session. Out of all the different ways that AI shows up, we addressed natural language processing as well as machine learning directly. And machine learning is like a really, really big concept, but the tool that I'm going to share with you is really, really good at making things a little simpler. So let's get into it. Natural language processing with Magic School AI. And so you may be familiar with this particular platform. Magic School AI totes, and claims that they can help teachers fight burnout and join thousands of others that are saving hours to help lesson plan, differentiate, write assessments, write IEPs, communicate, and do all of those great things. So before we get into this particular tool, I want to make sure I give you this disclaimer. All of these things that we're talking about, they're suggestions, not necessarily requiring or demanding anyone utilize these tools. Also, you need to be fully aware of the expectations and the requirements when it comes to data and privacy within your particular learning space. So whether you are higher learning, and there are particular rules at your institution, you need to be aware of those before you encourage or provide these tools or require this tool usage with your students. The same thing applies with K-12 traditional in the classroom education, and it also applies when we're talking about out of school or non-traditional learning environments with K-12 age students as well. So make sure that you understand what your organization requires when it comes to protecting privacy, data, and things of that nature, and make sure that you're not violating anything. Also, as you're using these tools, especially these text generators like Magic School AI or Bard or even ChatGPT, that you do not enter identifying information into these platforms. So, for example, in the K-12 space, if you are involved in the IEP writing process, there are so many different ways that you can beef up your IEP content, especially when it comes to thinking of accommodations and innovative ways to better support students, right? However, we want to make sure that as you are providing your tool of choice, the information to develop said accommodation, that you're not giving away identifying information about the student. Of course, the obvious one is the name. However, I must say, do not put student names in platforms because this has happened and people have been terminated because of it. Also, if you're entering information about a particular student, make it as generalized as possible. I live in Jackson, Mississippi. So if I were to be using one of these platforms for a student that I would teach, I would not necessarily say a student in Jackson, Mississippi. Instead, I would say a student in the southeast of the United States of America, because that opens it up to, a few more states. So think that way when you're creating these prompts or you're making these requests of these platforms, just so you are covering yourself when it comes to protecting students' privacy. And of course, this is a big, big, big thing in K-12, but I also encourage everyone in higher ed or non-traditional learning environments to do the exact same thing, protect our students' privacy. All right, so back to the programming. So Magic School helps with creating content. They do have a lot of things that kind of help protect you when it comes to FERPA and COPA, but just protect yourself first. Meaningful feedback to students can be provided because you can actually take a student assignment, drop it into the platform, and it will use a rubric to assess student performance. I will say a caveat to that is this. When you are utilizing any tool to pre-grade, if you will, or pre-assess student work, make sure that before you share that information with the student or, put it into your grade book, that you double check to make sure that the program did exactly what you wanted it to do and that the results are similar to what you would have done if you had completed this task by hand. And so the reason why is this. Artificial intelligence is not without error. AI makes mistakes all the time. I think this is the reason why when you go onto platforms now, it will say a little disclaimer at the bottom that the platform does make errors. Please check for mistakes. Um, when it comes down to it, you as the professional, as the educator, you're responsible for whatever you put out. And so the argument of, well, ChatGPT told me this was okay, is not going to fare well when we are having issues where students, and then of course K-12 parents, but parents as well in higher ed situations, are expressing concerns. So just make sure that whatever you send out, whatever you put out, is something that you can stand behind if you're questioned about it. No more being stuck with ideas, which is one of the things I definitely like this for. Break the language barrier. They have translation ability in multiple languages, so that helps if you have to, or if you need to communicate with parents in a way that the student themselves not serving as a translator. And then, of course, it offers accommodations for diverse learners. Let's actually take a second and look at the platform and let's see what it looks like and how it works. So, Magic School AI, this is what it looks like. I've been using this platform for quite a while now, pretty much right when it got started and started to pick up a little bit of steam. And so now it's been featured in a lot of different places, which is good because they're getting a lot of input and they're making a lot of improvements. But once again, make sure that you confirm that it is okay that you use this platform in your work environment. They have resources. It's pretty straightforward how to use it. So I'm just going to go in and model how to use it for you. Apparently my trial of Magic School Plus has ended. I remember when Magic School AI did not have, a premium offering. I've used it for that long. So there are quite a few tools. They have added more tools since the last time I've logged in, which is wonderful. You always want to have a platform that continues to pop different things up. So some of the things that I'm seeing, a syllabus generator is, hey, as much as I did not like writing a syllabus when I was in the classroom, I would not want to do that. Class newsletter, if that is a requirement, a data table analysis, SAT reading questions. Okay, so it's like you can do some model questions with that. Science lab, so it gives you ideas for that. Multi-step assignment, I'm not sure what that is, so you can generate a full assignment based on any topic with the warm-up, the content. That sounds super, super great. Letter of recommendation, for those of us that have been fortunate enough to be requested to do such an honorable thing, sometimes it's hard. Even when you have your most stellar student saying, oh my gosh, this student is amazing, you just need to do whatever they're asking you to do, doesn't really come off well. So a letter of recommendation generator is great. Group work generator, family email, text translator, song generator, text summarizer, IEP generator. Make sure you don't put in student information. A text rewriter. So that would be great if you're trying to scale up or scale down content to meet a student's needs. But let's just go old school. Let's just do a lesson plan. Keep it simple. So when I was in the classroom, I was teaching 9th grade. Let's say that the topic is photosynthesis. And then the additional criteria, students must create did not spell that correctly. Students, and as you guys just saw, I use Grammarly. That's another AI tool. Students must create a song, art piece, or poem to illustrate understanding of content. And as you can tell, I'm just making this up as I go along. The standards that it will align to, I told you guys I'm in Mississippi. So Mississippi, MISSISSIPPI, state standards. Let me see if it actually picks up with that. I know if I put in the college and career readiness standards, which is the official title here in Mississippi, it pops up. But I'm curious if it's going to do the same if I just put Mississippi State Standard. Let's see. And so once you put in your inputs, you can generate. It does have an exemplar now. They used to not have that, which is great. And then you can also clear your inputs. But let's go ahead and generate and see what it looks like. All right, so exploring photosynthesis is what they're calling this lesson. Over here, I can copy, I can save the resource, I can export it, put it in Word, put it in Google Docs, but apparently you have to be premium or plus. That used to not exist. But I guess everyone has to make money. You also have the option to edit the prompt. So there's that too. So the objective by the end of the lesson, students will be able to explain the process of photosynthesis. That's a solid objective. I would throw that on a lesson plan. The assessment is what I was saying that needs to be done to show mastery. The key points are here, and these key points, skimming them super fast, are accurate. I taught biology and science for a very long time, so I can kind of glance at it really quickly. It gives you an opening, introduction to new material, guided practice, independent practice, closing, an extension activity, homework, and the standards. And oh, look, it did pull the standards. It pulled them for middle school instead of high school, which is a concern, but there's that. Now, down here at the bottom, you can, of course, vote it up, vote it down to let it know how it works. But also, it gives you some additional questions that you could ask. Apparently, these are premium features. And then you also have additional actions you can translate. Questions, links, summarize, custom. I'm not sure, so let's click and see. Questions, I think you can create multiple choice questions based on this. With the link, you can make it shorter or longer. Summarize. It looks like a lot of this now is behind the paywall, which was not the case before. Interesting. One thing I want to make sure I share with you is Raina. Raina is their chat bot, their chat GPT bot, if you will. And so it is set to be best for educators, allegedly, but you can ask additional questions here. And then you have, I think, what I'm seeing something talking about things you love. I'm not sure what that is. They have training now, share the magic, and then they're talking about upgrading. And so while we're here, let's see what it actually costs to upgrade. Because once again, when I started using this platform, there was only the free option. And I knew eventually they would have a premium option, but I'm a little surprised and a tad bit concerned that almost every feature is behind a paywall. So I may, after this, stop using this as a suggested tool. Maybe, maybe not. But for Magic School Plus and Enterprise, so Enterprise is for schools and districts, so that would not be the individual educator like us. But for those that want a limited usage and plus features, so now they limit your usage. Oh my goodness. So it's looking like right now, until this date and time, you could get it for $79.80 a year, which if you live somewhere where you are provided some sort of funds from your state or from your district every year. In Mississippi, we get essentially a debit card with state allocated funds. I would use my state allocated debit card funds to pay for this. That's what I often use mine for different subscriptions that I had. But let's see the features. It looks like you can do 60, you can access 60 plus tools, but it's unlimited with the other ones. Raina is still available to you when it's free, but it possibly is limited in some kind of way. Chrome extension is still available to you, but maybe it's limited. I'm not sure. You can save your output history. It is limited here. Under free, you don't have access to the early access to the new features and the tools. Apparently, there are different ways that Raina can customize all of your responses and prompts. You won't have access to that. Integrating directly into learning management systems as well as other platforms, you won't have that. And customization, feature request support, and the privacy is the same. So it's still pretty decent to use. One thing I would say is this: when it comes to using these platforms, I use them for a jumping off point. Give me some inspiration to where I can build things on my own. And so that's what I would recommend for this. Like I said, unfortunately, the paywall has come down, and it's come down quite strongly. So if it is in your budget, if it is accessible to you to spend this amount of money to receive this support, then there's this. But then there's also the other platforms that are chatbot like that exist. And then with those, you would just have to really, really strengthen your prompt writing ability. And so that is Magic School AI. Now let's talk about teachable machines. So this goes into machine learning, which is pretty cool. So we're teaching a computer to complete tasks without explicit instructions. I love this image. It's from one of the best shows ever, Black Mirror. It's the one where the robot dog things kind of come around, and the lady was afraid, as she should have been. So, machine learning is something to where I'm like, oh, this is so cool, and then I think about the possibilities, and I'm like, oh, this is a little scary. And so this is where we definitely want to have those conversations about the data. Why are we building this? What are we using it for? Who is it going to help? Who could it possibly harm? How could we decrease this harm? These questions appear or should appear or show up in conversation when we're talking about how to use these particular tools.
People are training computers and creating machine learning models to explore all kinds of new ideas. New ways to interact. Yes. To understand the world. To play. And experiment. But machine learning is pretty intimidating to get into. So we've been wondering, what if it wasn't? With Teachable Machine, we set out to make it easier for anyone to create machine learning models without needing to write any machine learning code. When it first launched in 2017, it allowed everyone to get a feeling for what machine learning is all about. But now, Teachable Machine puts the power of machine learning in your hands, allowing you to save your models and use them in your own projects. So let's say you want to build a model to recognize you versus your dog. You just open up the site, record samples of you and samples of your dog. Click train, and you instantly have your own machine learning model, which you can use in your sites, apps, and more. You can upload your model to host it online, or download it to work entirely on device. With Teachable Machine, you can create custom models for all sorts of things. Using images, audio, or even poses. Personalized machine learning models for the things that matter to you. And folks have already been trying it out, using Teachable Machine in their own experiments, solving problems in their communities, or even just at home. Start creating and see where your ideas take you at g.co/teachable machine.
So, Teachable Machine is a great resource because it does make something as complicated as machine learning very simple. It's truly a three-step process in how you make this work. And so you have your examples just like they were showing in the video, to where you can either have images or you can do poses where you indicate where your joints are. That's where the dots were showing up on the videos. Or you can do things based on sound. Whatever you choose is perfectly fine. And then you're going to get enough samples or enough data points to where the program could actually do the next step, or do the identifying rather, without your direct input. And so that's why you saw when lady was doing her face versus the dog, and she was kind of moving just a little bit. It's kind of like when you're first starting to use biometrics on your cell phone, and you're first training your phone to recognize your face if your phone has face recognition for unlocking. And you have to, kind of turn your head around a little bit in a circle. It's to make sure that your program or your machine knows completely what you look like from multiple angles, so it can correctly identify you in the future. And so that's kind of how it works. That's why she kind of wiggled around a little bit, and then she also wiggled her dog a little bit, and that's how I was able to tell the difference between the two. And so you'll give a lot of data points, and then afterwards you're going to tell it to train the model. Y'all, training the model is just as simple as clicking the button. That's how straightforward it is. And then from there, you can either just kind of play around with it to say, oh, that's cool. You can also give it multiple data points to differentiate between. So it doesn't have to be two, it could be quite a few. And then you can either kind of play around with it in the Teachable Machine platform, or you even have the option to export it and use it for something else. So one thing that always gathers my attention is the gentleman that was in the chair and that was able to hum. And once his hum humming sound was received, it turned on the light in the room. So it can be just that amazingly transformative in how we're giving people independence to be able to do things that otherwise they would not be able to do, especially if they have physical conditions that don't allow them to move the way certain things were designed for them to use, right? And then, of course, I think my absolute favorite one, though, is the one with the doggy door. Whenever I can have a week's worth of time to work through that process, my dog will no longer have to depend on me to go outside, and I'm going to be so excited. So, those are some of the things that you could do with this data and with this program you create through the export lens. I will say there was a news article some months ago now at this point where a student was able to use a platform similar to this. I think she actually used Teachable Machine to help differentiate ASL, and so that is super, super cool. There have been where people use it to identify retinal eye conditions. I have a colleague that did that. And so it's a lot of the options. They are absolutely endless. It's truly just your imagination. And so this is why I love recommending this tool for student use. Of course, after you make sure that it's okay to use it in your learning space. But let students really just kind of get in and jump in head first, not really knowing what they're doing, but they'll start to come up with ideas for solution generation that, always blows my mind. So, the project options, as I mentioned before, are image, audio, pose projects, and you can kind of tap into it and get some really cool things happening. So, before I tell you about how the lab works, let me do a quick example where I show you how this works. So with Teachable Machine, you essentially can jump right into it. You can just get started. If you want to save it, there is a way to save it directly to your Google account. I just kind of poke around with it. And so you have the option to not save it as well. And so with the samples that you're going to gather, I will get a sample of my background noise, and hopefully it's not too loud because my kids are home. And then I would be able to do the other sounds I wanted to identify. And so, of course, you want to be able to have your background noise just so the program knows exactly what you're wanting it to identify and what should not be identified as whatever the thing you label it to be. So, of course, you got to allow it to use your mic, and then it's going to ask me to record 20 seconds. And from here, you can actually record over it if you want to re-record new sound. It's just up to you. If you hit the gear, it allows you to change your settings to where you can delay duration 20 seconds, but you have to have a minimum of 20 seconds of background noise. So I'm not going to change anything. And so now I'm getting ready to create my audio sample noises, and I'm just going to basically hum. The difference here is that it's going to record in 2 second increments, and then it's going to require you to have 8 minimum of these. So I recorded myself humming, and it's telling me I need to extract the sample, which if you can see here the difference that it's that pinkish color, that's indicating that I guess it's more sound than just background noise. And so you can extract the sample. So I have 2 audio samples. I need an 8 minimum, so I got to keep recording. All right, and so I was a little bit of an overachiever. I did double the amount that was requested. But one thing to keep in mind when you're doing these type of experiments, you want the most or the greatest amount of data that you can get. So recording a few extra times wasn't that complex, right? Right. So I have all of my samples set, and so now I can get ready to train my model. And I also forgot to mention that as you record, you will need to hit record to make it start recording, then make it stop, And then once it has processed the audio or the images, it's going to ask you to extract the sample. And then that's how you get it to pop over. So as you can see, once I have met the requirements of my background noise and my class, my second class is going to be humming, I can train my model. There are other complex things that you can do. I would not necessarily suggest diving into these things or requiring students to understand what these things are unless you're teaching a more advanced level course or an advanced level section, right? For all of what we need, we can just train the model like this. And so it's going to tell us that it's preparing to train the data, and you essentially just wait it out until it's telling you that it is done. Once it's done, it's going to tell you that the model has been trained. You can export your model, as I mentioned before. But for what we're doing now, let's go ahead and see if we can make it work. So I'll be quiet to see if it's going to show up as background noise. So it's about 90, jumping back to 87% on that. And then let's see if it actually picks up me humming. So it did fairly okay, right? But we definitely saw the jump. And we definitely saw the jump whenever I was humming. It was a little bit more on the humming side versus the background noise. Now, if we're in a learning environment, I would definitely say, hey, students, why do you think it wasn't perfectly at 100? And they're going to give all of the ideas and all of the feedback, and that's great. But when it comes down to it, a lot of it is I don't have enough samples. And so the more samples I have, the better this is going to work. And so this is why that conversation about data is so essential. But in a nutshell, this is how Teachable Machine works. Now, for the last portion of what occurs during the AI lab is the actual lab part. So essentially what you're going to be able to do is experiment how you want. So there are two slides that help you out. You have guided experimentation with Magic School AI first, and so you can click on the scenario, it'll pop you to a different little screen, and you respond based on that scenario. So if we went to scenario 2, it would talk about improving student understanding in a ninth grade computer science class. The educator is Mr. Anderson's ninth grade course. That's the course topic currently that's happening right now. And this is basically like a case study. Okay? So you would essentially use the particular tool that was provided in order to solve this issue. And then you can go back to the Magic School main page. There was also a link to Magic School on that page. Here, you also have the option to just do unguided experimentation. If you already have an idea of an issue you're trying to address or solve, go ahead and tackle it. And so that's why the lab is cool. We give you a little bit of guidance if you want it, not if you don't. And then the same thing here. The guided experimentation with Teachable Machine, different levels. And it's the head tilt tutorial. So you can have the machine determine if you're tilting your head left and right in real time. And so that could be something of great value in usage if you're going to use those types of gestures to help someone that may not be able to complete a particular task. And so just like with the Magic School AI, you have the option to do these guided experiments or the unguided experiments. Doesn't matter, however you want to flow, that's perfectly fine. And then just in case you wanted to hop through, there's the scenarios already there. And so when it comes down to next steps, of course, we want you to consider how do you plan to use what you've learned. However you plan to use it is perfectly fine. However you incorporate it into your teaching practices is wonderful. Just make sure that you are critically thinking about what's happening to the data, where's the data going, who's using the data, and make sure that you're protecting your learners from having their information, put out there into the data world to be used to improve platforms or used as in ways that they just did not necessarily approve of. And then, of course, if you're interested in learning more, we always try to leave you with resources. There are a lot of different resources here. Off the top, Project STEM is a curricula that is created by Amazon that helps with the middle grades level with understanding what AI is and learning how to build things using AI tools. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal curriculum. And it's free once you apply. So tap into that. Hello History is a pretty cool thing. It's a chat bot with history figures. I think this is behind a paywall, just FYI. Steam Labs is cool. Mid-Journey is what people talk about when they're trying to get images made. Be careful when it comes to providing your face to go into these platforms. Um, let's see. There's all the things that Google has about AI that's here. When we're talking about ethics education, this is already here. It's really important to talk about ethics and whether or not these things should be loosely, widely used, or should there be restrictions. And there's so many other things that we could talk about, but we are at the end of our time. Hopefully, this resource has been helpful to you. Please make sure if you have any questions that you reach out to us. To email us, it is Mississippi@csteachers.org. Have a great day.